Hi, I'm Norman Perolo, a furniture designer maker at Perolo Design and a woodworking educator at WoodSkills, and today I'd like to talk about the newly designed jewelry box I've just completed. So the difference with this is its unique aesthetic. If you followed any of my earlier work, I was a former jewelry box maker 25 years ago, and I've since dropped it and moved on to furniture design and furniture making. But this box is a newer design. It's lower, wider, deeper, and it has a totally different aesthetic, a little more contemporary, more modern than my earlier boxes, a little more rectilinear. The unique thing about it is that it incorporates Kumiko as divisions, so it's a functional application of Kumiko as opposed to a purely decorative. So if you followed any of my earlier work also, I'm well known as a Kumiko maker, and I primarily use Kumiko for decorative purposes and wall art and incorporating into door panels, cabinet door panels. But this is a totally different application. This is functional and it serves as a divisions in the box. So in the next segments of the video, I will discuss how I designed the box, how I created the box, and some of the highlights of the build of the box, and also quite a bit of detail on creating the actual Kumiko inserts and Kumiko divisions. So it's a 3-level box with 2 sliding compartments, 1 fixed compartment below. And it's quite spacious, it's large, and it's different. I haven't seen anything like it. Another unique and interesting feature of this box is that it was developed through some components I had, some parts I had from a mantle, a fireplace mantle that I disassembled. We've modified our fireplace. We no longer need the mantle. So it's an oak mantle, and I've had it as part of my wood inventory for a long time, so I decided to use it. And if you look at the first part of the video, you'll see that the box originates from components of the original oak mantle, 25-year-old mantle. So it's a good example of upcycling or recycling wood from an earlier furniture piece or mantle into something new. So that makes me happy that I've actually been able to use some of my surplus wood to make this. So it's one of my first designs in a long time for a jewelry box, and I hope to be making maybe more of these and then different combinations of woods. I find that the oak and the maple work really well together. So it has back-mounted stop hinges. It's large again, 3 levels, sliding compartments, maple feet, and these are examples of my the Kumiko I've made over the years. And I've also want to talk about. If you look at the video, you'll see that I've had to modify some existing Kumiko guide blocks for the wider components for the Kumiko. This is almost close to twice as wide as a standard Kumiko, or maybe 60% wider or 80% wider than a standard Kumiko, 1/2 inch to 1 inch. So I've had to modify some existing guide blocks, and I talk about that too in the video. And I've also had to acquire a very wide chisel to be able to accomplish all this. So I can show that too. It's a 1.5 inch chisel. So stay tuned, and as the video progresses, you'll notice I switch from mostly image based to some more detailed video of the actual creating the actual components and fitting them into the jewelry box. So stay tuned and enjoy. I'm Norman Perolo from WoodSkills, and I'd like to talk about a few woodworking books I've written. My recent book is Quiet Woodworking in an Unquiet World. It talks about my movement to hand tools, from high-tech to low-tech, a woodworker's journey, which chronicles my journey from my former high-tech career to my current furniture making career. Along with that, I offer courses through woodskills.com. The courses range from a basic woodworking course right through to furniture design and a comprehensive design and making course. All books are available in both print and digital format. So at the right is the original fireplace that I've recycled all the parts. I've kept the mantle and the side parts, and it turns into that jewelry box at the left. So these are the sides of the fireplace. Now there are numerous holes in there to attach it to the wall, so I've had to work around these holes. And this is the other end of the sides that meet the mantle. Again, considerable number of holes that I've had to work around to save these oak pieces. complete view of the side pieces that I'm going to be working with before I break them down into components for the jewelry box. These are the components I've decided to work with the jewelry box, along with some offcuts. So I've dry assembled the jewelry box with a groove. You can see the groove and the top maple panel that's going to be inserted in the groove before gluing up. So just basically a test fit. And here you can see again using some band clamps and the top just to arrange it correctly before rabbiting the top so I can fit it into the groove. So I've actually assembled and glued the jewelry box with the inset top with the grooves created so it fits into the rabbets. Now I'm creating keys or slip feathers and the sides, and it's critical to space the slots correctly because I'm going to be slicing the box open. Here I've sliced the box open. You don't almost see the seam, and the keys are almost not visible. They're very, very thin, but they're strong with the correct grain orientation. This is the back of the box with the back-mounted stop hinges that I've had to carefully insert. I hadn't done this in a number of years. The side view, you can actually see the seam where the lid and the cabinet, the jewelry box itself meet, along with the inset top, maple top. I've opened the box up. So this is essentially a basic box, a hinged box with sawn open, and I've had to clean up the edge where they meet. And this is some of the components I've already created for separating the different levels, the sliding compartment levels with the fixed level. So I'm now creating the sliding compartments using a series of strips, rabbited strips that I've created, and some masking tape. So I've assembled one of the compartments, and you can see I've used the masking tape, and it's important to ensure that the diagonals are exactly the same in length. So, and I glued the bottom in to make the compartment give it some structure, increase its strength structurally, as opposed to just fitting it into a groove. So here I am test fitting the completed compartments, just the basic compartments, the bare compartments, and ensuring that they slide and everything meets correctly. So the design for some compartments to move left or right, so you can see the compartment beneath, and it says another view, so you can actually reach the bottom compartment, the fixed compartment, from the top if you slide both of the sliding compartments to one side, left side or right side. Again, you can access all the different compartments without actually having to remove the compartments, including the bottom fixed compartment. Very important design consideration. So I'm jointing one long edge of each of the panels that I break down into strips for the interior compartments. I'll just reverse this and actually do two things at once. I'll joint both edges so I can just use a bandsaw then to cut this panel down to the strips I'll use for subdivide the inner compartments. I'll use the Kumiko setup to continue afterwards. Using a combination of a shooting board along with a bench hook to bring the pieces down to size for all the different inserts within the jewelry box. This actually provides me a very precise fit, and it's very important because they're mitered corners. So I'm using the bench hook to cut the component down to size here. And I use the same setup and create the 45-degree angle. And then once I've cut this angle, it's just a little bit rough, so I bring it over to the shooting board as I demonstrated just earlier, and then I bring it down to the correct size, so I can do both sides here simultaneously. I can't say enough good things about this bench hook. It locks into the bench through that bench dog you see, so it prevents any moving around, rotating. So I run into a small issue. The compartments were going to be divided into a Kumiko pattern on the 3 levels of the jewelry box, and this necessitated a wider components, wider strips for the Kumiko motif or pattern, between 3/4 to an inch depending on the level of the compartments. And the jigs, the existing jigs I have for Kumiko are designed for smaller, narrower 1/2 inch wide components. So I'll have to make a modification. I've given it quite a bit of thought on how to avoid modifying the guide blocks that I normally use for Kumiko, but I've come up with an idea, and so I'll be going forward with that and modifying them so it handles wider strips, wider Kumiko strips. And that's going to have to be removed, and I'll make some changes here, and I'll show the changes after I've completed it. So it's going to take me the afternoon to do this on 2 different guide blocks for 3 different angles. So I've completed the modification of the Kumiko guide blocks. This portion removes for each of the guide blocks for the different angles, the 45-degree, 67, and 22. So I've added these strips along here to accommodate the wider Kumiko components for the jewelry box. This is for the lower level. It's a little narrower for the upper level, but I've had to compromise, so I've made it approximately the size of this, and then I'll use it for a thinner one. So this works for both angles. So I do need to leave this sliding component in to keep the groove set. So that's an idea of how I would work the actual profile or the angle at the end. So actually I haven't tried them yet, and I'm anxious to try them. So this has taken me almost an afternoon to design and do this, and it slowed me down. So I could have had this all done today, but here we are. Yeah, very interesting. So I have 3 sets of guide blocks, so I sacrificed this guide block, but this will work for me for any future work with wider components, as opposed to that's about 1/2 inch there. That's the original size, or that's the new size. I'm happy with how this turned out. It was a dilemma. I didn't know what to do. I was going to actually recreate a new set of guide blocks with a wider groove, but this seems to have worked out. This is the area where I create the profiles, or the angles on the edges of all the individual Kumiko components for the jewelry box. This is that very same strip I've just shown you with the correct thickness and width. There's an example of a 45-degree profile created using these modified Kumiko guide blocks. I've raised the sides to accommodate this width, and I've also filled in the interior so I can use the only problem I had was I only got a maximum 1-inch chisel, and I should really use a 1.5-inch chisel for this width. Because I don't have access to one, I need to complete this in the next day or so. I've filled in the area here so it doesn't cut into the edge as I'm going along. But I should really use a 1.5-inch chisel, which I'll be getting for my next series of this box. So I'm very happy with how these guide blocks have turned out, and I can always undo everything and revert back to the original guide block with the sliding stop. And although I don't have a sliding stop in these, so I'll continue with this, and I'm actually building up the compartments individually. I'm at the lower level now, and I'll probably be completed with this in the next couple of hours or so. So I'll be giving a very short demonstration of how I would complete a 45-degree profile on this strip, and this actually divides the compartment in the jewelry box. So I'm using the modified Kumiko guide blocks. So this is the 45-degree end of one of the guide blocks. So it's just a matter of being judicious and not trying to slice away too much at once, and having a very, very sharp chisel to perform the clean cuts. So I'm actually doing one side of the 45 at once, at a time. So once I feel like I've reached the middle of the thickness of the component, I flip it over and create the 45-degree bevel on the opposing side. I offer a complete Kumiko course on how to create Kumiko components, and I have all this in much more detail. Available at woodskills.com. So this is a 45-degree profile, and this would go into a corner, one of the corners on the compartment, and that's almost a perfect 45 degrees, created using this end of one of the guide blocks, a 45, 67, 22 and a half, and another 67 on this side. So that's essentially how it's done. Now I just measured this to size to the correct length and work on the other end. I'm not working on the 22 and a half degree angle, which is half of 45, and this actually splits one of the corners into two different compartments, so this fits snugly in here. So this is the 22 and a half degree face of the guide block. So use a circular motion. It's safer, and it pulls the chisel away from my other hand. Well, that's one of the sides, and then I flip this over. So I've got a perfect 22 and a half degree angle on both sides, and this combines to create the profile or the angle, the bevel that actually fits into one of the corners after the 45-degree division is inserted. And this would be the 45, so this is adjacent to the 45. You can understand why it's divided in half, so it fits in the same corner on both sides, on both this side and this side. I'll continue with this for a while. So I've completed the insertion of the outside frame, and this will be used to tuck in the bottom lining for each of the compartments or the sliding trays. This is the lower middle one, this is the upper one, and I'll begin the actual process of creating divisions now. There's also another one here that's been lined also. So the joinery is mitered. It's performed again on the bench hook, cut to size dimension, and then the 45-degree miters are created on the shooting board as I've demonstrated earlier. So each piece is custom fit. Literally, once they're cut to size, they're trimmed down on a shooting board. It doesn't take too much time, but it's the only way to get it nice, tight fit. So I'll begin the process of organizing or the sliding trays in the bottom compartment with divisions now. Where I'm at, I've actually completed the Kumiko inserts on each of the levels. This is the top level, the middle level, and the bottom level. So the next step is to put a handle on, finish everything, level everything off, and create a liner. I haven't decided on the type of liner yet for the trays, for each of the compartments. I'm quite happy that it's worked out with the Kumiko. I've never done a Kumiko this wide, close to an inch, between 3/4 and an inch on different levels. So I've had to modify my Kumiko guide blocks as I shown earlier, but it seems to have worked out. And these are the how the trays will be partitioned. So it's quite interesting as opposed to just a conventional square or rectangular layout of compartments. I like challenges, and this was an idea I had in my mind for quite a while, and I was looking for an opportunity to make it, and this jewelry box is it. So I wanted something different, something I haven't done before, so I wanted to explore using Kumiko in a functional sense and not purely decorative like I've made before. For example, this is a Kumiko motif or pattern, a square pattern. I would probably insert this in a cabinet door or have it on some wall art, but this is more functional. So I'm quite happy, and I'm going to give you some more progress pics as I go on, and I need to build up the lid also. So you can see the bottom compartment of the jewelry box, and I use that Kumiko grid motif pattern on the left as a basis or a template for how to set it up using components. And this is a partially completed jewelry box. Now you notice the feet at the bottom. I'm going to be talking about this in the next few minutes, why and how I added these to the jewelry box. So I've created a mortise for the handle, and this is the design for the handle. I normally do more of a curved handle for jewelry boxes, but because the box itself is fairly rectangular, rectilinear, I decided to just go ahead and create a handle that complements that design. So that's the handle. There's a little gap here, but I'm going to be covering this. It's a little inset, and that's a new thing I'm doing rather than have this exposed. So this is the handle, and this is the mortise I created. So I've used a combination of chisels and a router plane, and mortised it in. The tape is to delineate the actual mortise, and it's centered, and that's the measurement I've used. And that's the handle, maple handle, to contrast with the oak body. So I'm trimming the interior components that fit into the lid, just creating sort of a subframe within the lid. It's more of an aesthetic feature. I don't necessarily need it in this box, in this lid. First part is to actually cut the rough miters on a bench hook. And then I fit each individual piece. And I find this the best approach. Seems to work for me, and sort of expedited the whole process. I've got a system I go back and forth, and it works fine using the shooting board with a 45-degree case miter setting. So I've completed trimming the components for the inside of the lid to create a sort of a frame, more of an aesthetic thing to delineate between the oak and the maple. And because the top panel is maple, of course the frame itself will be maple to contrast with the oak. So I've trimmed all the components as I've shown with using a bench hook and the shooting board with a miter attachment, and fitted all the pieces. So I'll just insert them and show you how tight I can get this. I'll mark the orientation on each of the components. So I'll actually lightly glue this, maybe just a dab of glue just to keep it all together. And that's the completed lid with the handle. But that's the completed lid with the handle and the frame. And I just need some gluing and cleaning up. I'm just breaking some of the edges a little after I've assembled it all together, so I can continue with the compartments, lining the compartments now. I've done this. So I'm creating the slots for the keys, or the slip feathers in the corners of the sliding trays of the jewelry box. This is a little jig I created, and I use this also in the actual case itself to create slots for keys. So it's very versatile. So I line this up, and it creates a perpendicular slot. I've marked these slots up and I've already pre-measured them. two, or three actually, and I need to create a fourth. I'm going to be using very thin slip feathers or keys, so it's not obtrusive and it doesn't stand out much, because I don't like the fat keys, and it works just as well. As long as the grain orientation is perpendicular to the joint, it should be fine with regards to strength. So just completed the slots, and I've inserted the slip feathers or keys. They're very thin. They're very, you know, already noticed them once I've trimmed them, and so it should take an hour or two to dry correctly. And this reinforces the sliding compartments considerably. The bottom is glued on also, so there's a balance between the glued bottom and the slip feathers or keys. So I just wanted to give an update of where I am with the jewelry box. I've actually completed the box, and I'm working on the finish now. So I've applied maybe a coat or two of a shellac, thin shellac, and it's actually has a little more body in it. And then the final coat, I thin it towards the end. And these are all the strips that I've marked. That's for the interior lower compartment. This is the lid that I've completed. Put a little frame around the panel and installed the handle for the lid. The only two woods I use are maple and oak. And these are the compartments, the sliding compartments with the individual pieces that go in. So I've actually completed the maple surround with shellac. I'm still working on that, and I'll be inserting this. My next step is the other compartment, sliding compartment. The next step is to create templates, cardboard templates of the compartments, the large compartment, the lower compartment, and the two sliding compartments, using some cardboard. So I create the actual template, and I haven't actually done that yet. It's interesting. So just to give you an idea, I taped around here. So this is the liner for the sliding compartments, and the fixed compartment will be glued. It's a suede liner, so I need to cut that up perfectly, even though there is a frame that covers the edges, so it still needs to be quite accurate. So I'm going to be creating templates in each of the compartments and applying this to the underside of the suede material, and then cutting it out, and then methodically gluing it into the trays, the sliding trays, compartments, and the bottom compartment. I haven't really done it that way before, so it's new for me. So I've got the cardboard, and it's going to be interesting. And I love challenges, so this is going to be interesting. I usually used to wrap it around some other cardboard, and so more of a padded appearance, but this is suede. Pure suede, so I want it attached to the lower, the bottom of the trays. So I'll work on that next. I also want to mention that I've added, just to enhance the aesthetic of the jewelry box, I've added contrasting sort of feet to the bottom of the box. They're maple, so they complement the oak, and again, it's the same maple that I've used for the top lid and for the handle and for the interior components. I was originally going to use some brass feet, but I decided to make this, and so I've made them and shaped them and attached them, glued them on actually. So I thought I'd mention that. So it actually raises the box. It's not only aesthetic or decorative, but it actually raises the box, so you have some clearance, so you can handle the box or grasp the box on either side. So there is some function to the shaped feet. So I've essentially completed the box. I've applied 3 full-body coats of shellac. I polished them down and then applied a thin coat of shellac, and so this is my combination of shellac I use. Now, prior to that, I lined the bottoms of the sliding compartments and the fixed compartment with suede using adhesive. That was a little some anxiety in doing that, because I had not really done it that way before. I've always applied something I could remove. Now this is fixed, and these are the remnants of the of the suede I used. To be able to do that, I create templates of the bottoms, precisely fit. Sorry, this one is this one. Precisely fit templates, and then I use this as an outline to cut the portions of the suede from a larger sheet. So these are the 3 compartments, and so that's the process. And suede's kind of expensive, I find. It's a little nerve-wracking to do that, but I'm much more comfortable doing it now. So I'm very happy with how the box turned out. I put the pieces in. I did allow for the thickness of the suede when I first created the components. I had reduced the thickness down to below the outline, the actual compartment itself, to allow for that thickness of the layer of suede on each of the sliding trays. And now that's kind of important because otherwise it prevents the trays from sliding if they interfere with each other. So the bottom one's fixed, and another important consideration is to do this very methodically to avoid getting any glue on the surface of the suede, on the show surface. So I've developed a technique of creating a roll and unrolling the suede into the compartment, into the bottom of the compartment. So there's actually no chance of any glue getting onto the surface. Something I hadn't seen done before, but I think carpet layers do it that way. So it's lined with maple, everything's fine. So I've completed the finishing, and it's more of a subdued or satin finish, not a glossy finish. In the past I would automatically create a glossy type finish, but this is subdued. So I find it a little more elegant, and it's quite a large box, 17 by 12 by 6 inches high, and very, very happy with it. And I've had good feedback so far. I've only completed it over the last few hours, and feedback's pretty good so far. So this is the completed box with the finish applied. It's more of a satin finish, not a glossy finish. And I'm just demonstrating how the compartments work. They're lined with that a very nice contrasting suede, real suede. That was an adventure in installing that correctly. I hadn't done that in a number of years also. I used to be formerly a jewelry box maker 25 years ago. So this, all the compartments slide, and you can actually see the bottom compartment from each of the top compartments. So I just want to give an example of that. The feet are attached, and everything lines up perfectly. Some more images of the static images of the jewelry box with the contrasting suede liner at the bottom of the compartments, sliding compartments and bottom compartment, with the feet attached. And I think the combination of oak and maple worked really well. Of course, I had to use that oak from the fireplace mantle. And this is the back, again, with the back-mounted stop hinges that work really well. They open till 95 degrees, if I'm not mistaken. And they're very strong, very, very thick. And this is a more, to demonstrate or to show the detail of the compartments using the Kumiko grid that I discussed earlier. So please subscribe to my YouTube woodworking channel, where I share more of my woodworking techniques, my woodworking philosophy, my thoughts on woodworking, and all the challenges I've experienced. And I introduce some of the new forms of woodworking I've discovered. And also visit woodskills.com, where I have a good selection of my books, both in print and digital format, on woodworking, and all my online courses, and I also offer woodworking plans. I have maintained a regular blog on what I've got going on in my workshop and in woodworking in general. So enjoy.